Welcome, everyone. Happy Halloween. Oh, good to have you with us on a Halloween. We were delayed tonight. We couldn't get Bruce Turner out of hair and makeup. He's very high maintenance. And so it took a little while. And the makeup lady said, I need some time. I'm not a miracle worker here. Let's go to our panel. And we have Pam Adger. Welcome, Pam. How are you? In Menifee,
Good.
California.
How are you?
Doing quite well. We thought you were going to have some exotic thing.
Yeah. My makeup just didn't work out, so I'm blind. That's what I am. I'm blind because I have contacts in, so I can't see.
You're wearing
So
contacts and glasses?
these
Maybe.
are readers
Oh, okay.
because my contacts are old, so they were previous prescriptions before I got old.
Oh, and you got the big giant box to save money, and they've lasted years. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
been there, done that. Kevin, welcome, Kevin.
Nice to see you, Dan. Nice to be here.
Awesome.
It's nice.
You're not out trick or treating.
No, not quite. No, I'm inside instead.
And Bruce Turner is with us in Lynchburg, Virginia. Welcome, Bruce.
Yeah, it's Halloween. I figured you needed a scary face, and I like Reese cups for my Halloween candy. If anybody wants to know.
Well, I do notice that around this time of year, like at the Postal Business Center and the liquor store, they had candy out, and normally it's like pretty ghetto. But around late October, you get the really good stuff.
Well,
Root beer barrel candy and peanut butter chocolate things and stuff.
but candy corn is the official fall candy, so that's about the only time you can get it. My dad used to always keep a little jar of candy corn next to his lazy boy recliner.
Yeah, that's epic candy. I used to like the circus peanuts until I OD'd on them one night when I was a kid, and they're disgusting to me now. It's odd. Uh, in New York, Mr. Alan Furstenberg. Welcome, Alan.
Hey Dan,
You have a
good to be
friend.
here. And I have to say I am all about the candy corn, especially on November 1st when they put it on massive discount.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm a candy corn guy. And do they have any that did they do some Halloween things with
That stuff is vile. Candy
Oh,
corn is nasty.
oh
Oh,
yeah, totally. But
so you can give yours to Alan.
but what's your point, Pam?
Don't they have hangout special effects, or was that just for photos?
That was just for photos. I noticed that it's not in the topics, by the way.
Oh, oops. But that
But
topic expires in 3 hours on the East Coast, 6 in Pam's neck of the woods.
we do have the classic the classic Google effects, which we can use to add makeup. So
Okay.
let's see.
All right. So a quick note here: you can tweet to us hashtag GooglePlusWeek. We can kind of, I guess some of us will see the YouTube comments. Maybe I'm not sure. I think generally no, and but I can monitor them. So I'll be looking for those. And Google Plus comments, I think, still work. I think. Brad says hello on YouTube, so I can see here. I can look at my player, and it puts the comments here, so I can get an idea what's going on. All right, so there. I will be on the Virginia Talk Radio Network just after the CBS News at 11 a.m. I think we're talking Ebola and exploding rocket things. Or if something more interesting comes up, we'll talk about that. But definitely probably the Ebola thing. And we'll talk about that on the show at the end here as well, about a judge has ruled in the case of the nurse. So that's after 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific time, and on VirginiaTalkRadioNetwork.com. Check it out. Bruce can listen live to any of the stations in the network. So next up, our topic here. Spain okays the Google tax demanded by news publishers. We're seeing this all over Europe. And then we saw, I think last week we discussed that Germany basically caved in, but they're still pursuing other stuff. The gist of it is this. The publishers are producing content. Their print money is diminishing. Their online money is a tiny fraction of what they would get from the same number of readers in print. And so they're saying, well, Google's making, billions of dollars a month, and they couldn't do it without our content, the snippets of our content, so they should cut us in. And Google's response is, no, it's the equivalent of asking a taxi cab to take you to a restaurant. And that they're happy to assist in some of these countries to help publishers and how they can get more money from their online offerings, and that it's up to the publisher to do with the visitor what they will. So I think at one point they just delisted in Germany. They just put the headlines and no first sentence or anything, and their traffic, it was a disaster because they're 90% plus of the traffic in Europe. So Alan, what do you think? This is just sort of the same story keeps repeating itself.
Yeah, it's the same story. It keeps repeating itself. We're going to see it quite a few more times. The interesting thing in this case is that in response to the law being passed, the value on the tax isn't even set yet. Google has said, given a vague, we're interested in working with publishers to help them monetize their sites, but it hasn't done what they threatened to do in Germany, and that's okay, we won't link to you. We won't, if you're going to charge us for putting your content up, we won't put your content up. That's easy. I imagine that if Google did that, the publishers would cry foul again. This is, in some ways, this is a non-story, but
they have to be careful though, because it does raise. I would think they're not a monopoly because there are other search engines. They're just more popular because they're better, or because they're more popular. I don't know. And so it does raise, in Europe, which has a much more diminished view of freedom of speech than the United States, and yet a greater emphasis on antitrust than the United States. I could see them getting in trouble if they pulled what they did in Germany and all these other countries.
But why? I mean, basically the law says that if you do this, then you're going to be charged for it. So Google says, okay, we won't do that.
The other side of the coin is, we saw what happened with Microsoft over Internet Explorer and with Windows when they said that you can pay this amount for Windows if you agree to buy a license for every single computer you manufacture, or you can pay this higher amount for Windows, and you can put Windows on some and Unix on other machines, or OS 2 or whatever you want, and they were slapped for that. They were slapped for including Internet Explorer, even though you don't have to buy a Windows machine. You can buy an Apple.
That's because what they were doing was using their dominant market position to force companies to buy their service. Google is doing the exact opposite.
Yeah, that's really true. I mean, Internet Explorer is in Windows like a face hugger. It's real, like straight out of Alien. You can't take it out of Windows without actually damaging other services. And so that's not what Google's doing.
Yeah,
but the key is not whether it's right or wrong. The key is what these crazy EU judges and commissions will say to protect their homegrown publishers who they're afraid of against the evil American company. I'm not saying that they're right. I'm saying that this is probably a concern for Google and should be.
I mean, I think it's a concern for Google. I think it should be. But I think Google, if they took the action of saying, look, you're telling us that we need to pay if we do this, therefore we're not going to do this, it seems perfectly justified to me.
Yeah, I think it's going to hurt Spain in the end in a cumulative way too, because it's not just this decision that they're making that's bad. I mean, they've been making several politically bad decisions in terms of encouraging employment and labor. I mean, their unemployment rate is still over 23%. I mean, youth unemployment there is like 45%. And then they start passing laws like this. It kind of gives a cumulative signal to companies that Spain is not really a great place to do business in general, and in the internet in particular. And so I think this is going to be in the end of all the studies in Europe and all their laws. I think this one's going to be part of a cautionary tale to not push these things too far. In the end, I think it may spread over into a couple other countries in the near future, but I think the example in Spain is going to be a bad one.
Okay, Bruce, anything on this?
Well, I really like Kevin's Alienware facehugger comment, especially on Halloween night. But I like looking at the comments in these things, and the comment that intrigues me the most is, and I'm wondering if this is true because I haven't read the law. I mean, I've looked at the article, but Michael says in his comment on the post, it says that it allows them to charge, but doesn't force them to charge. But then he adds, and I really like this: any smart news outlet won't charge, as it will just cripple their viewership. And any news site that does charge is probably too stupid to put out any kind of intelligent news product that an informed reader would want anyways. I thought that was a great comment.
Pam, should I, if you blog about whatever, should I have to pay you for the right to tell people to go to your post and click on ads next to your content?
No.
How come the Halo's not following you around? Oh, it's a
I don't
static
know.
thing.
I think that answers its own question, Dan.
If she put up the horns, I bet the horns would follow her.
Oh my god. Okay. All right. Next up is Alan may have something to say on this. It's a shame Cadeas is not here. He said he's coming, or did he say anything at all? Okay. The Motion Picture Association of America and I forget the name, but the Association of Large Movie Chains in the United States have both said that come up with new guidelines on what you can and cannot bring into the movies, what's banned. Like you can't bring a movie camera, TV camera, and set it up in the middle of the theater and tape the movie. And one of the things that they've added is wearables, including Google Glass. We talked about a specific thing before. Go ahead. Now, I don't know if this means the Android Wear.
Let's be clear about what this says. And I actually pulled up the specific policy from them about their updated language. And it's the National Association of Theater Owners, NATO, because, there's nobody else that calls themselves NATO.
They may actually exist pre-NATO.
So NATO and the Motion Picture Association have a long history of welcoming technological advances and recognizing the strong consumer interest in smartphones and wearable, quote, intelligent devices. As part of our continued efforts to ensure movies are not recorded in theaters, however, we maintain a zero-tolerance policy toward, listen carefully, toward using any recording device while movies are being shown. As has been our long-standing policy, all phones must be silenced, and other recording devices, including wearable devices, must be turned off and put away at showtime. Individuals who fail or refuse to put the recording devices away may be asked to leave. If theater managers have indications that illegal recording activity is taking place, they will alert law enforcement authorities when appropriate, who will determine what further action should be taken. So basically, they're saying two things which don't quite jive with each other. The first is that the policy is a zero-tolerance policy towards using a recording device. And then they say, oh, and you should put away your wearables, for some vague definition of what put away is.
I don't think that's unreasonable, the actual writing. Clearly, piracy does exist. I do believe that there is an impact, especially overseas, on new movies when they're in the theater. If you can just go to
Yes, but the piracy for those is handled via. I mean, most of the piracy that takes place is done by copying the material, not by somebody sitting in the theater.
it's usually an inside job.
Yeah.
And what would it take? About 8 or 10 guys to each record 20-minute snippets of the movie from different angles to do it,
Yeah,
and it would be
something like
shitty.
that. But there are two flaws in this that I can see. The first is that clearly they don't address the actual technological limitations of the wearables. I can understand that. You know, they want to make a broad policy. They basically want to make sure that their asses are covered. Fine, I can understand that. They're a little vague on what they mean by put away, though, and that part concerns me a little. Because now we're taking an issue of somebody who is wearing glass and somebody who is wearing a necklace and somebody who is wearing a watch may be treated differently, even though all three of those devices may be able to do the exact same thing.
It would be pretty conspicuous if you had your watch up for 2 hours.
Really?
Don't you
You
think?
think so?
I mean, I guess you could go like this, and but talk about a ghetto recording. You could not compete with the Chinese guy who's like straight up duplicating the master.
Right. No, you couldn't anyway. But from what I've been told, and I'll be honest, I've never seen any of this pirated crap. It's crap. They are ghetto recordings. So I don't know. Yes, I understand why they have the policy in place. I don't even think it's a horrible policy. I like, however, one of the stories actually has a really good picture of me as their stock photo. I need to find that one again.
Do they use it all the time? Like that's man with glass?
No, it's this great photo of me sitting at I/O, staring and taking a picture, and Noble Ackerson's on one side of me, and John Feig is on the other side of me. All three of us are wearing glass. It looks like we might be at a theater, but we're not. We're sitting at I/O watching the session.
Is it like those 1950s shots when 3D came out and they showed the audience and they're all sitting there, or
No,
a Devo show? You could take
it's
your
a good
pick.
picture. It's a good picture of me. I've tried to get a license. I've tried to license the picture, but I haven't been able to yet.
Okay.
But so I think the MPAA's policy is not totally unreasonable. I think you're going to have some strange enforcement of it. One of the things to note, though, is it doesn't say that glass is not allowed in a movie theater. It just says that you need to take it off before the movie begins.
I think if you were wearing it and you weren't even thinking, you just walked down and you're talking to somebody and you eating your popcorn, you got your glass on. I could totally see Cadeas doing that. I think if the manager came over and was polite and said, "Sir, would you mind not wearing that during the movie?" That's very different from the situation where that guy was all but detained.
Yes, it is.
He was and he wasn't technically, he was voluntarily there for an hour and a half or whatever it was. But it was like 3 goons with badges, you know what I mean? And the inference is that your life will be a hell if you don't agree to sit, And I wonder what's interesting. I wonder what they do. If like your movie theater, who do you call? You call the guys in the theater and you think that they're recording.
You call them mall cops. That's who you call.
The local cops?
Well,
And
I
when
said
Barney,
mall cop, but
when you think, are they going to know
no.
what the applicable law is? I bet they have a kit, like an emergency break glass kit that says, here's the law and here's what you say to the officers. Here's the...
I
they
think
wouldn't
you're
know
being,
what to do.
I think you're being pretty optimistic there.
Yeah, they show up on a Segway. Can you not buy a custom set of glass with prescription lenses? So what if I need glasses to see, and my particular glass that I bought is complete with frames and prescription lenses in it as well?
Here's the thing, and the original the last case that we heard about did have that, and I do, so there are issues there. Go ahead, Pam.
You just have a second pair.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it boils down to, is you need to carry around a second pair.
There have been enough stories about restaurants banning glass, largely for publicity, or because they're ignorant. And then the potential legal problem that one woman, although I think her case was dismissed or she won it, whatever it was, who was pulled over and given a ticket for something else and for operating video display device, which was glass. I think there are, oh God, freaking Java. I hate Oracle. Cancel.
I think the
Are you
well,
sure? Yes,
here-
I just hit cancel.
yes. I mean, the simplistic answer is yes. You carry around a second pair, and that's fine. There's some interesting issues there, though, because if it is a prescription glass, then it starts falling under the American with Disabilities Act. And, is this a reasonable accommodation or not?
That's
and
That's a
this is
that's a straight up protected group.
vision impaired. It's a disability.
I'll add that to the list of mine.
One thing for sure, you could certainly tell any of these crappy copies that were made with Google Glass, because every once in a while you get a look into some guy's milk dud box or his refillable popcorn, because how could you stand still and watch the movie? You'd get a really stiff neck, you'd have to be looking into your...
Well, that's it. I mean, clearly, glass is not, just totally non-feasible for this, and the policy doesn't make that distinction. But at the same time, the policy is broad enough to say any future wearable should be treated the same. Now, whether they're really treated the same, that's going to be, see what happens in the courts.
Maybe they should have just made glass with Java installed, and then people wouldn't worry about it.
Or they could put Flash and it would just crash all the time.
It does have Java, Kevin. It does have Java installed.
Well, I mean the Java for Windows.
Oh, why would anyone use that?
The next Windows 8's a fail when they just skip a number afterward. To say we're really not doing 9. We're not. It's not going to be like 8. The next threat to movie theaters, Bruce, will be a little pocket 3D printer that will just, when you want some milk duds, you hit a button. And they'll have to be faster than the current ones, though. It'll be like an hour, you can get a couple of milk duds.
Exactly.
Like that USB toaster fake box that the gift box that the Onion sells. One was a USB toaster. It said does 6 slices an hour. All right. Next, this is a story I really wanted to get into first, but I know Alan's chomping at the bit and he demanded to be able to explain it instead of me. But I was ready. Google's solid state disk storage now out in open beta for compute engine users. So I will defer to Alan on this topic.
Okay, so we'll take this one slow, Dan.
Thank you.
You know what a hard drive is?
I know what an SSD is. It's just compute engine is like Amazon Web Services, but Google's version, right? It's for higher like engineering type. If you had you could run like Snapchat or something on it, right?
You can run whatever you want on it. It's a server. I run, web servers there on occasion. I use it to just toss files there on occasion because its disk space is cheap.
It's a virtual server, right?
It's not a virtual server. It's what we call a server.
Okay.
So you run programs on it. It has an IP address. Nifty stuff like that. It has a hard drive. And now what they're saying is you can now get a solid state drive, hard drive for some of them, if you're in the right zone, as part of a beta test.
Is this something that you actually like with a conventional hosting service? If you had a popular blog, you can just get a hosting service, or you can have a virtual server where it's a shared server, or you can actually get a dedicated server. Is Compute Engine like that, or is this like a big network of badass things and it looks and acts like a server, but it's not really? Or am I totally not explaining that?
The broad answer is yes.
Up or down, sir? Why not?
You can get it in a number of different configurations, but the big deal about Compute Engine, same as the big deal about Amazon as AWS and the same big deal as Azure, is that instead of buying a chunk of a machine or buying a machine for a fixed period of time, you start them up, you shut them down, you do whatever you want. It's incredibly flexible. So if, for whatever reason, I decided I needed 2,000 virtual machines, I start up 2,000 virtual machines. and when I'm done with them, I shut them down. If I want to keep one running longer, I keep it running longer. It's totally up to me what I wish to do with this with this hardware.
So let's say you were the NFL and you wanted to create a real-time app for fans to do some sort of a temporary pop-up social network just for the Super Bowl. You could ramp up your capacity for a 48-hour period and then dumb it down.
Even better than that, Dan, is that I could be monitoring my servers, and as the servers start getting more and more loaded, I just bring new ones online to take over the additional load.
And you pay per use.
You pay per use, you pay per minute.
So as opposed to hosting, where it's a couple hundred, about $250 for a dedicated host is probably a couple $100 to $300, right? And then regardless of how much use, it's going to be hundreds of dollars for a virtual, and then if you get a dedicated. So this is neat. Is this, or I've mentioned this before, but is it practical for someone who wants to set up a WordPress site, or?
Probably not, but WordPress, WordPress.com, whatever service you can use to actually buy WordPress and run it on WordPress's site.
.org is where you download the free version to host wherever you want. .com is where you can get a free blog, or you can pay them for its freemium model. That
runs on one of these web services. So it's done for you. You don't know or care.
Right. So if you have large fluctuations and you've got a large user base, this is definitely a smart move, because like if you're a food blog or like a Food Network website, they might have a lot more traffic around Thanksgiving and Christmas than they do when nobody's
but
cooking.
even most of them, they're built to handle a pretty broad amount of scalability. This is for the startup who right now has a few dozen users, and tomorrow they suddenly make the front page of the Wall Street Journal.
They get the TechCrunch article or the Walt Mossberg review, and they explode.
And they suddenly get 100,000 people signing up a minute. That's what these web services are good for.
And Google has this kind of thing, right? With Google Plus, with Inbox, these things explode, and they do it by invite at first, largely for PR, but also to check things. But is this sounds like it might have been a product that they were using, and just like Amazon, they're like, well, we built this for our own infrastructure. Why don't we resell it? Amazon's
absolutely. I mean, Google Compute Engine and Google App Engine are massively used internally by Google. They built this for themselves first. And other products that you have as part of their cloud platform are very much based on what they have internally. The recent announcements probably about 6 months old now at this point, of new pipelining computation and some of their other technology, that's all based on what Google had been doing internally. All of the stuff from Compute Engine is based on what Google was doing internally. Now, how much solid-state drives they're using internally, that I don't know, to be honest. And Google's not going to tell us. But this is one more component for people who are already doing a lot of disk-based I/O and who want to get just that additional level of speed out of their Compute Engine resource. And I haven't even checked what the prices compare to, how this price compares to their standard disk offering. But given the fact that prices on disks are dropping like a rock, I would imagine they're fairly good and fairly competitive.
Let me ask you this, Alan. There's a comment at the end of the article, and this is one of the questions that I have, where it says Google's price model was less complex than Amazon. Who do you think is best positioned to compete in this arena?
Well, let's put it this way. There are currently 3 major players and a bunch of also-rans. Amazon are clearly out front, and Microsoft and Google are battling fiercely. And then there's everybody else. Rackspace, for example, just got out of the business. They still have cloud computing, but it's now a managed cloud computing. it's a very different product than it used to be.
They couldn't compete, so they just.
They couldn't compete. There was no way that they could compete against the big three.
Poor Scoble. I just had to say that.
Well, he's still working there,
my
isn't he?
heart bleeds peanut butter for Scoble. But no, Google's pricing on compute engine resources in general, with a couple of exceptions, are just brain dead simple. It basically boils down to, this is the price per minute. If you use it for more than 25% of a month, you start getting discounts automatically. If you run it for a month, solid, if you just leave it on, you essentially get a 30% discount. As opposed to the other two, which say if you want discounts, you need to pre-subscribe to these, to these levels. Amazon has an absolutely absurd number of pricing tiers and service levels and resource levels and other things, which really gave me a headache the last time I tried to look into this. Microsoft's offerings are a little bit better, but not much. Google is just basically, here's the price, here's the maximum price that you will pay, and we may just, the more you use it, the more we'll start giving you discounts.
So it seems easier.
Yeah, you see some of that pricing too on the consumer end. If you get in Google Drive, they just make a couple of tiers and that's it. It's just this price, this price, this price, and they just make a couple of tiers and that's it. And it sometimes feels like it's, at least on the consumer side, somewhat limiting, but it's also a lot freeing too because it doesn't give you too many choices. And so I guess they're aiming for that in the enterprise level as well, or the business level.
So Google may be the T-Mobile in this space, maybe, is what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I'm pulling up the prices now to compare. And okay, so basically the persistent disk pricing for their standard disk is about 4 cents per gig per month without any discounts. And for the solid state drives, it's about 22 cents per gig per month. And with some restrictions. So the SSD you need to purchase in specifically sized chunks, whereas the normal persistent disks, they only charge you based on the number that you're actually using. So, yeah, it's the pricing seems comparable to what you get in the outside world, and it seems pretty reasonable if you need that speed. And not everyone needs that speed.
Question. Only a complex database that would be relevant, right? In other words, like, because it's even a hard drive is going to be faster than the fastest internet connection.
I'm not quite sure what you're getting at here.
Okay, the bottleneck is the internet. Isn't it? In other words, there's even a typical spinning hard drive is going to be faster at retrieving something than it takes to send it to you.
Yes.
So this would only be relevant if you had a particularly robust or really large database, or if you had shitty code, inefficient code, that sort of thing.
Well, no. What I mean, the need for this is if you're doing a lot of processing on data. And that's not necessarily a large database. That's processing of any data.
The NSA, for example, could probably benefit.
Well, suppose you were offering a service that had to have video. You were trying to process online video for people. I mean, that might be a good use for SSD.
Sure. Okay.
And remember, this isn't meant for the long term. This isn't necessarily meant for long-term storage. So, using the video processing as an example, this might be you upload the video and it gets saved to this disk. It then does whatever processing with the intermediate and the final output also saved to this disk. And then it copies it into the permanent storage.
Yeah.
So if you had if you were doing the holy grail app that I want is a full-featured, cloud-based, multi-person access
You-
video editor.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
That's the one thing that does not. I want Final Cut or Vegas or Premiere truly in the cloud to be able to do. When you can make a Steven Spielberg quality movie in the cloud, and Alan in New York and Bruce in Lynchburg, and all of us can jointly collaborate at different times. We could do different things. That would be really be badass. If I could be working on the intro and you're working on something else. Let me ask you one other related question here, Alan. They just recently, Drive is $10 for 100 gigs. That's what I have. And then I think I'm at 70. So that's where I keep all of our newspaper advertisement raw files. So I have a person in Front Royal, and I have a person in Strasburg, and I have a person in North Carolina, and any of them can access those. And if we have a change to Joe's plumber ad, they pull it from my drive, or they've got it, my drive synced to their hard drive, so they just have to open it up and they edit it and save it, and then if they're sick next week and the other person has to do it, they can access it. That's fantastic workflow. But here's the question. With an apps account, I think they changed it, and they said and now that $10 a month paid apps account gets unlimited drive storage. So does that mean that it would be dumb for anyone to, once you hit that tier of 10 or $10 a month, and if you run out of the 100 gigs, it'd be dumb to upgrade that when you should just spend $10 and get a paid apps account, and just share it with yourself. Share it from your apps account to your personal account, right? Does that make sense, Bruce? You're a big apps guy.
Not really, but sounds right.
Okay.
Yeah, we're all playing the waiting game until they drop the prices again, which is going to happen, I'm sure, sooner rather than later.
It's like the airlines, they go up or down together. Not in collusion necessarily, but when one drops and the other one drops.
Yeah, we know it'll drop, so we just do that separate apps account thing until it comes up.
And this stuff's getting cheaper. I just saw an SSD advertised on Newegg. It was $398 for a terabyte. That's pretty good, I think.
You know, when I bought the Chromebook, one of the premiums was it came with a certain amount of space, and then they dropped the price since I bought my first Chromebook, and I really think that not only are the prices going to drop further, but I think that what they offered you when you bought the Chromebook is going to end up just becoming, at least that amount, becoming free, and you'll just be able to keep that.
Also, Dan, for apps, it really is a $10 a month for 100 gigs, because I know for consumers it's dropped. I know it's $10 a month for a terabyte for regular Gmail.
For actual drive storage where you can upload a video file or whatever. I thought do you have to do something to do that? I mean,
those are the current prices right now. $2 a month on a regular Gmail for 100 gigabytes. $10 a month for a terabyte, and it goes from there.
I thought I was paying $10 a month for 100 gig. Maybe they suddenly started charging. Maybe I was, and they just changed it.
You are, but it was about 6 months ago. We covered it here on this show. In fact, we pretty extensively discussed it then.
That is in no way related to whether I'm knowledgeable of a topic.
We're aware of that, Dan.
There's stuff that I knew in depth when I do the radio. I prep, like it's cramming for an exam. Like we were talking about Sunni versus Shia, and I knew the names of the ancestors. It was 1,000 years ago, whatever. And I mean, I did a really good presentation on it. Now I totally forgot. It's only been a few months. Plus, I'm ADHD, which is a disability, so you shouldn't mock me.
Squirrel.
Okay, Sai has a couple comments that are always good. He says, what if someone came up with an app that does voice to text and displays it on your glass? A case could be made for hearing impaired. Another example would be a translate app, right?
There are a number of applications where glass, again, could be an assistive device, and I think any movie theater would have problems if they tried to make you take your assistive device off.
And
But
all,
let's
I
be
mean,
honest.
just like YouTube, I think one of the things it says, if you're a broadcaster and you're putting a professional, if 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 you had something that was on broadcast television, which would be under the purview of the FCC, and it had subtitles for the hearing impaired, and you put it on YouTube or you stream it, you've got to include the subtitles. It's something along those lines, because when it tells you when you're uploading something, that's one of the things you can do. And so yeah, basically we want to do like what Aereo did. We want to carefully cultivate an app that would be illegal for them to ban it, just to troll them. Although, like Alan said, I don't think it's unreasonable the way the thing's written. I don't think it's unreasonable for someone to say you're in their public accommodation, but it's under their discretion that you stay. And if they politely say, "Sir, I don't know a whole lot about that thing on your head, but it looks like a camera to me, and I'm sure you're not doing anything wrong, but it really appreciate it if you could just remove it during the movie." I don't think that would be unreasonable. Now, to hire some goons and detain someone for 90 minutes is a different story. Sai says you can usually spot a poorly written law by its level of specificity. Are we talking about the Affordable Care Act tonight? They're just kidding. There are already, not really, there are already laws against recording, and that's the thing they're trying to protect. You don't need anything past "thou shalt not record copyrighted material." And Sai says we use SSDs extensively.
Hang on a second. Well, hang on a second. Let's address that though, Sai. This isn't a law.
Oops, wrong hit.
This isn't a law. What this is motion picture policy. So this is basically guidelines to movie theaters about how they can implement the law. It's basically telling movie theaters is, look, if you want to, they're basically saying if you tell people that they need to leave if they look like they're wearing or using glass, we're going to back you up on that.
I think the MPAA, which is the advocate for the guys who make the movies, that's the name, they offer guidelines or suggestions. They can't tell the theater chains what to do. The Association of Theater Chains does the same thing. And then it's up to each chain and to, another degree, to each manager or each person who's running the theater at that hour to do what they want to do. Just McDonald's could say you can't wear glass in their restaurants. It's a privately owned thing. They can do what they want. You can choose whether or not to eat there. And he says we use SSDs extensively to do calculations. 1 terabyte goes in, 10 terabytes gets generated, and the final result is several hundred meg movie file, or even smaller 3D mesh. We only need to move the 1 terabyte in and the resulting file out. The rest can get trashed after we have all of our results. I'm curious what the speed difference is, Sai, between spinning and solid state disks.
Massive. It's massive. I use it for, I just installed an SSD on my work laptop where I do a lot of compiling, which generates a lot of intermediate files, where I'm doing a lot of things that do write stuff to disk, read the programs from disk, and there's a noticeable speed up.
They behave just like I forget what it's called. It's 0-1 or 1-0. You can do the same thing. You can have, you can put 2 in there, and you can have them either mirror each other, so you have a backup. Whatever you save to 1, there's this invisible backup being created. So if this crashes, you got a backup. And then you could also use it to store stuff. A file would be stored simultaneously to both drives, which doubles your speed or close to it, so you get more performance that way. And if you put 4 drives in, you can do both of those things. What's that called?
It's called RAID, and you totally butchered the concept.
Yes, he did.
Both of them?
Yeah.
I didn't get either one
Well,
right?
The first one's called mirroring. You got that right.
Okay, yeah.
And RAID is something different.
Well, I thought there's type
Well,
0
RAID
and type
is-
1
there's
and type
a
1
mirroring
0.
mode in RAID. But this is why we don't let Dan near technology.
This is why we can't have nice things.
At any rate, next topic, Dan.
Okay, by all means. Oh my God, we're in the double digits in viewers on a holiday. That's cool. Okay, so Google's
Joining.
newest search, cancer cells. This is about, I don't know, sort of like the good Borg. They talked about this stuff before, and Psy updates. He says his bottleneck is usually on the bus. We've talked about this before, where they've said that you could get a sensor, and they could stick it in you or whatever, and it could tell you what your if you're diabetic, it could tell you what your blood sugar is at any time. It could give you a warning if it's dropping or whatever. It could monitor it throughout the day. Imagine if you had a constant thing.
Dan, I'm really impressed. You took what was a really cool story from Google and you just soft pedaled it. So it's like, oh yeah, there's
No,
this
I said
sensor.
we've had similar forays into medical stuff from Google before, and now this is different. That's what I was saying.
Well, but I mean, when we were talking about the blood sugar monitoring, the cool deal about that was that it was done via a contact lens.
I think that's another thing, but I think they've also talked
No.
about a sensor
No.
that could be in you that could test for any number of things. And
Well,
that was,
yeah, but then you started talking about blood sugar levels and talked about a
I
sensor
think
that
that
was
they
inside
said
you. And
that.
the cool part of it was that it was specifically that it was a contact lens.
that was that's a third thing. But there was a thing that I think Larry or Sergey, one of them, talked about it, and he said it was some kind of thing that they could plant in you or whatever. Like you only get stabbed once and it's in there, or they bury it in you, and it could test for any number of different diseases or monitor different things. Because, I don't know, I guess you get used to stabbing yourself every few hours, but I imagine...
That's this story.
Is it the same thing that we talked about in like 2011? There's some new development. Now they're talking about nanoprobes. That's my Borg reference. What if you could hack the nanoprobes and create 7 of 9? So anyway, what's the deal here, Alan? Since I've obviously butchered this.
Anyone else want to speak to this one? Otherwise, I will.
Cy speaking. He says, I'm not really...
All I would say, I'm a native Floridian. Do any of you remember Body Wars in Epcot? I mean, the ride ceased in 2006.
Yes, I remember Body Wars, but come on, Bruce, don't you remember Fantastic Voyage?
Yeah, but this Body Wars reminds me. I mean, we're talking about little things, smaller than a blood cell, attaching themselves and going throughout the body, looking like sentinels for little anomalies that might indicate a cancer. I think this is an amazing thing, but I couldn't help but come up with a Body War analogy. That's one of my favorite rides.
Could they make a thing? Could they make a thing that just like, I mean, that's how, like, your body's natural defensive mechanisms attack an invader. That's what pus is, right? So if you have a healthy immune system, then your body attacks the bad stuff, and then sometimes it goes awry, and that's what cancer is, and it grows like crazy, whatever. But it is. Are we talking about actually building like a machine version of this?
It's a pus generator.
Oh my God! Wow. And Cy says, I'm not really comfortable letting Google, quote unquote, stick something in me.
Google you every day anyway, Si. I don't think it matters.
Would you rather go see his proctologist?
Exactly.
They could put your video on the TV like they did Reagan. Okay, so anybody else have any thoughts on this exciting?
You haven't had any thoughts on this
Yeah,
so
just
far.
go ahead, Alan. Tell us what the hell this is. I've explained what it isn't. Alan.
Basically, what they're looking to do is develop nanoparticles that, as Bruce said, essentially travel through your body, collecting information, and then ways to get the information out of the particles without having to, open you up.
Right.
So it's a combination of this collection system. It's a combination of the monitoring system, the data collection system, and then seeing if there are ways that these same nanoparticles can be used to treat whatever is found.
Yes.
So this combination of them is what Google is researching. Go ahead, Michael.
I assume in Europe they can opt out of any of the reporting mechanism, right? They can have the nanotechnology, but they want to opt out of the information going back to anyone to make it useful.
Here's the thing. This is Sai's comment, this is your comment. All of this is, as Sai mentioned on a previous story, all of this is covered under previous health law. We have very, very strict privacy guidelines when it comes to health. And Bruce might be able to better speak to those than I can. But our privacy laws are already in place there. This doesn't change them. We've got fairly strict laws regarding regulation of medical devices, and depending on how they implement this, it may not be considered a medical device. It may be considered a drug. So that's another level of
Protection.
monitoring.
Yeah.
So thinking about this in the classic terms that we always think about Google, we've got to get out of that mindset. Not every part of Google is going to be working in collaboration with every other part.
So you don't think
Not the modern Google.
the nanoprobes will be carrying along little banner advertisements or anything like that?
Can you imagine what the anti-vaxxers will do over this?
Yes, I can, and I really
Oh
would
my
rather.
God. What's her face? Michelle Bachmann? I think Ellis is a big fan.
Come on.
Well, obviously, the first part of this is the detection part. I mean, later on, you can get into the actual healing part, but I would really be interested in what process they would use to extract the data that these things are able to detect. I mean, that's
Well, that's part of this. That's part of what they need to do as well, as the article pointed out. And really, what it kind of ends up boiling down to is you would need some kind of, in the same way an RFID chip. It itself has no inherent power. I mean, it's a very low power device. It's a very low power transmission. So you would have to, physically have a device waved over you or sitting on top of you.
right.
And as the particles go by, your monitoring device says, okay, we've now seen 90% of the are in there, and they've all reported everything is fine, or here's the information that we've gotten out of them. So as each one passes by, it needs to be transmitting, all good or big problem or whatever. So I think there's some interesting aspects to this, certainly. But I think if you think of it in terms of a tiny RFID transmitter,
Yeah.
again though the question then turns into, okay, how do you ensure the privacy of these transmissions?
Hmm. But, well, I suppose. But it does seem that as Bruce said, it seems like something they would need to put a monitor very close to you, like the ultrasounds that they do on, when they rub something across your belly.
Yeah.
Ultrasound, something that close, which is exceptionally difficult to accomplish in an unobtrusive way. Someone has to really be noticeable if they're going to, put
You
a
think so?
your scan-
I could rig up a way to read a monitoring device depending on where it is.
to
What if I put the monitoring device in a bunch of chairs in a waiting room?
And then it reads it through your butt when you sit down on the chair, I suppose. Yeah, okay.
I can imagine some kind of almost kind of an MRI type of machine that, because these things are coursing through your body, and I'm not sure how fast, with the blood circulation it would be, but some kind of a machine, some kind of tubular thing that would be able to monitor, where it is and when it gives us particular information because of where it is and what it's close to,
Yeah.
what it's sensing.
But I think that the worry is more about an MRI type device would be something you would have to voluntarily go through, wouldn't it? I mean, it wouldn't be like you walk through a doorway into J.C. Penney's and suddenly everything, all your medical history is read to them.
Oh yeah, correct. In fact, I'm sure there would have to be some type of thing where, these things don't stay in you forever. I mean, there's some, and it may be that and you don't want to get too gross here, but it may be that they expel themselves to a normal, digestion type of thing, or they're, they're involved with some interaction with the liver or something else like that, where they're dissolved, but so that it's not something. It's almost kind of like the radioactive type stuff that they put in you when they run these tests and everything. So the shelf life, for lack of a better term, may not be very long for these things.
Yeah, it's great technology. I mean, it's very interesting. It's intriguing, but I am suspicious of it because we don't know very much about what it really will do, how the body will really respond to it, and I have a lot of fear about the fact that people tend to think that we know a lot more than we really do about the way the body works. And so I think we do a lot of things that cause unintentional but serious harm to the body, to people's health, even if it's not immediate. So I like to refer to many manufactured foods as they're not immediately poisonous, they're slow poisons. So they don't kill you the minute you take them like cyanide would. So no one will make them illegal, but they kill you over the course of several years because we don't know that they cause that problem.
Yeah, it's kind of fascinating how much of a moonshot this really feels like, not because it's something unimaginable, but because sometimes they don't even know the parameters. I mean, at the end of the article that I'm looking at, they don't even sometimes know the healthy levels of the disease-carrying molecules. I mean, they're not even sure.
Right.
Even if they monitor it, they're not even 100% sure about how much of a molecule they're supposed to be seeing when they see an illness.
Right.
And I think that creeps people out when it comes to their bodies themselves, because we just don't know, and so usually we worry just if we can just leave it alone, it'll be okay. And so if we insert something into the body, we kind of worry because we just don't know. It's really fear driven. And so that's something that we have to overcome as well.
One quick note, I got a comment, and then you guys go back to it. I got a quick comment from PatLaw53 on YouTube. Where's the live chat room? What we're doing is we can put up comments from YouTube, we can put up comments from Google+. You can or on Twitter, hashtag GooglePlusWeek. You can shoot those out, and we're monitoring all those places. Probably the best place would be to go to either my stream or the GooglePlusWeek page and comment there, and then we'll see it. Or if you see it anywhere on Google+, any of the shares, if they're a share of my post, then, or actually I think it's a share of the video. I'm not sure, to be honest. But we're monitoring all that. So you can chat here where you just did or anywhere you want, and we'll see them, and we're putting the ones on the air. Especially if you attack Alan, then that's the fast track to getting some airtime.
Pat Law is a good friend of mine. His name is Mike Phillips. He's also an attorney. Yeah.
Oh, I did. Yeah, I know Mike. I didn't know that was his handle.
Mike? I haven't seen Mike in ages.
Oh,
either.
I just outed him. I'm sorry.
If he wants to join us, he's welcome to. Just send him the link.
Being anonymous, Bruce, you just blew that out of the water.
So anyway, I interrupted. Are we done on that one?
Yeah.
Okay. Next up, the maker of the Apple Pay competitor has already been hacked. Something that was all but forecast by Alan Furstenberg and others on this program for the last couple of weeks. So Alan, why don't you go through this? And I'm going to listen because I got to talk. I think I'm going to maybe talk about this on the radio tomorrow. And I might get the facts straight if I listen carefully to Alan.
So, as we've now covered several times, there is this consortium of companies who have been hoodwinked into thinking that they can actually develop a system that will do secure mobile-based payments. This system is being marketed under the name Curren C, Curren with a capital C at the end.
With a T, Current
it's most
C.
notable because two vendors who are part of this consortium really recently turned off their NFC readers because apparently their agreement with the consortium is that they will only support Curren C. and not support systems that may actually work, like Google Pay and Apple, whatever, Apple Wallet.
Google
Or,
Wallet.
Google Wallet and Apple Pay. There we go. So there's been a lot of people actually looking at this currency system, which is scheduled for deployment in 2015, but which has a pilot program in Michigan, I believe. And as people looked at it, they discovered a number of things, one of which is that there's a public API to verify if an account is a valid currency account. So you basically send it an email address, and it says, yes, this is a valid email address in our system. For a company that's handling financial information that promises they will keep your personal data secure, such as your name, your driver's license number, your social security number, your bank account number, this is somewhat disconcerting.
Yes.
To be fair, when we say hacked, I think I heard they just got your email address, right?
All that's been demonstrated is they were able to get email addresses. That's correct. But still, and again, we're talking about a company that is asking for our trust, that is holding on to a lot more information that, if compromised, is incredibly serious. Can you imagine what would happen if your bank account number leaked out? Can you imagine, Dan?
Yeah, I can. I was hacked twice, and,
Well, right,
to the tune of a
and
couple $100.
And all of that happened in those cases was your debit card was compromised. This is one step worse than that.
Yeah.
If they have your bank account number, game over. Game over.
Well, I mean, it's weirder than that because I mean, like you said before, they have both your bank account number and they could get your driver's license number too, and then combine the two to do even more stuff. It's really crazy how much information they need from you just to use their inferior service.
You have a thought, Bruce?
Well, I was going to say, what kind of corporate espionage can you imagine might be going on in this field between all these players? I mean,
In what sense?
Well, trying to hack into each other's systems, make one appear weaker, more vulnerable than the other, trying to get the upper hand in the business associated with it.
Well, here's the thing. I don't even think that Visa, MasterCard, Apple, or Google even tried. I suspect this was, uncovered by incredibly unsophisticated hackers. If you actually get real people that know what the hell they're doing, for all we know, there's already a zero-day compromise, and these guys are just sitting there waiting. Here's the thing. Any real bad guy would not have revealed this information. Any real bad guy would have sat there and waited for them to go live and then reap every idiot's bank account.
Right.
Right.
I think this is only the tip of the iceberg. I would not trust this product at all.
Interesting.
And I don't think the companies have demonstrated they are worthy of our trust. I don't think the product has demonstrated they're worthy of our trust.
You're so right about that. It seems to be one of the most irresponsible things that they could do to push this system when there's already a provably better, more secure system out there. They're exposing their consumers to such risk, and for no reason. I mean,
which provably better system?
For starters, chip and pin is better.
Oh yeah, but this is not about security. This is about money. Let's not kid ourselves. If they go right to the debit account, they don't have to pay 3%. This is what it's about. The CEO of Walmart was talking about this, about Apple Pay and everything, and he said that look, what I care about is if it hurts Visa, it's a good thing, or something along those lines. The former CEO, Duke or whatever his name is. And these guys cannot stand. They do trillions of dollars in transactions a year, and they 3% of that goes to Visa, Mastercard. Now people are using it to buy a cup of coffee at 7-Eleven. I mean, I don't even use cash for anything unless it's like a mom and pop rural convenience store. Then I kind of feel guilty. I spent $9 to get my propane can refilled for my pizza oven. I kind of felt guilty using my card, so I paid cash. But I had to think, like, do I have $9 in cash on me? Because I got 3 different cards, and
That's because you're a real person, Dan, unlike people who just, have a few $100 bills sitting in their bill roll that they can just peel off.
but the thing is, these guys are out. If they go direct debit to the, if I send you a bill for an ad in my newspaper, if you pay it with a credit card or a debit card, I'm going to get hit with 3 to 5%. In most cases, you're a business and you've got one of these rewards cards, and we pay that. So then I'm paying 4 or 5%. If you just have a consumer credit card with none of that crap, I pay 3%. If you pay with a debit to your bank account, I pay 50 cents for the transaction. Whether it's $5 or $50,000, I pay 50 cents. That's what these guys are about. What currency is superior for the retailer.
This is clearly all about the money. I mean, remember, we're talking, in this consortium are companies like Walmart who have done things like create their own bank so that they could avoid the transaction fees. This includes companies like Sears who have done things like create their own credit card to avoid the transaction fees. And that went so swimmingly for them that they sold it years later after taking a loss. So
Sears is someone told me Sears is not a retail store. They are a financial services company. Just like some of these furniture chains.
Just like General Motors.
You pay 30 years for your couch, but it's only $5 a month, and you end up paying $12,000 for your couch.
Right, but remember, once upon a time, Sears Financial Service started its own credit card.
Yeah,
That's
Discover.
Discover.
That was the Discover card, and there was a long time that the only card that Sears accepted was a Discover card. You notice they stopped doing that. There's a reason.
Well, all these are spin. A lot of these are spin. Ally, the bank, the new bank, Ally. That's GMAC rebranded. Ally Bank that you see on TV, the ads. It's so easy to bank. You don't have to wait for people. It's all online. That's GMAC.
So here's the thing. Yes, as far as the retailers are concerned, they're doing this because they want to be able to get that percentage back. But make no mistake, consumers are at the losing end of this stick in every single way. Consumers are not going to see any price reduction based on this. They're not going to see any increase in security. And these are from retailers. Remember, these are the same retailers who represent companies like Target and Home Depot, who have done a piss poor job at protecting our financial data so far, and now they want to protect even more risky financial data. This is a mistake. And I mean, let's put it this way. I will not be using these companies. Whether I have a credit card or not, I will not be using these companies because they are demonstrating that they have no interest whatsoever in their consumers.
Well, now you have to choose. I want convenient and safe, and they're not mutually compatible with any of the systems that are widely accepted at retailers.
No, sure there are. Convenient and safe is very much implementable at tons and tons of retailers these days.
Implementable or implemented?
And the reason why is because Visa and MasterCard have told the merchants, you either upgrade your systems to something that is at least moderately secure, or you're going to assume all the liability for any fraudulent transactions.
Well, chip and pin has been... Can you give me the 30-second explanation of that? Because that is coming, because that's mandatory as of 2015 or 2016.
No, let's be clear about, okay, first of all, what chip and pin basically boils down to is instead of storing your credit card number and transmitting your credit card number to the vendor, you need to use this card, which has a small CPU on it, and the vendor's terminal to punch in your PIN. That PIN is sent to the CPU, which then generates information which is sent to the vendor. It's a one-time number, and then the vendor has this number that's only good for a single transaction, is only good for you, and can be authenticated on the back end against you. But the vendor doesn't know who this is, who this represents.
So
This
the
is
bottom line is, if someone could have your credit card number, would you even have a credit card number?
You would still have, under the system, you would still have a credit card number, but that's not used for anything publicly.
Except like an online purchase, perhaps.
And that's a major flaw in chip and pin, and there are solutions to it.
So with chip
Not
and
good
pin,
solutions, but there are solutions.
I could announce on television, this is my PIN and my credit card number, and you couldn't do anything with it except online. You couldn't go into a
Well, no,
Walmart
you
and
wouldn't
buy it.
announce what your PIN is, because if somebody got your card, the game is up. But you could announce what your credit card number is, at least in theory, because the card number isn't used for anything.
Alan, why are you clearing that up? Why didn't you just let him do that and see what the results are?
Well, I'm not going to do that.
Because I personally believe that as much as I would like to demonstrate that Dan doesn't know what he's talking about, there are some things that I don't play around with. And
So
this is one
okay,
of them.
so just to clarify, right now a skimmer or a hacker, a skimmer would gather the information that's on my magnetic strip, which would have the card number. Then they would capture what PIN I put in, and they could manufacture a card to duplicate my card. But with the chip and PIN, they cannot do that. At least at present, they can't. And
Right,
so
well-
that information wouldn't be useful to them. But couldn't they just go online and order product?
Until you have essentially the online equivalent of it, yes. And that's one of the flaws with chip and pin.
This
Let me
is
ask
one of
you-
those cases where I wish they would find.
Well, this is one of the things that Google Wallet and Apple Pay solve, because they then extend the exact same technology to online processing to create these one-time tokens, basically. Now, let's talk about how chip and pin is being implemented. Basically, what Visa, MasterCard, Amex, and Discover have told the vendors is, for most of the cases, most retail vendors, currently, if you pay for something with credit card, and it is a fraudulent transaction, i.e. somebody steals your credit card and they use it, the merchant is not liable. The credit card company is liable. That's why the merchant's paying them 2 to 3%, is to assume liability for fraudulent transactions.
Mm-hmm.
So the merchant will always get their money, and that's a good thing. What the credit card companies are saying is, here's what's going to happen. On October 1st, 2015, if you use chip and PIN, we will continue to assume the liability. If you do not use chip and PIN, you will be assuming the liability. So any retail merchant with a quarter of a brain is saying, oh hell, we better get these chip and PIN systems because there's going to be a ton of fraud and we're going to be liable for it. And no vendor wants to do that. There are some exceptions. I believe for pay at the pump, that's extended to either 2016 or 2017. And there are certain other classes that are extended to either 2016 or 2017. But most merchant systems, October 1st, 2015. The clock is counting. You will see those merchants switch to it by then. Because if they don't, they're screwed. They're financially liable and they're just screwed. So there's no law that requires it. It's the contract with the credit card companies.
The market is working in this case.
Let me ask you some questions about Square, because Square is the alternative purchase method that I've used more than I've used anything else, NFC or otherwise. You have this little Square thing. My beautician, hair barber, uses that. Coffee houses, restaurants in town. And you can have Square Register, where if you're a vendor, you can take credit card payments and so forth. But Square used to have, and they don't have, and I found this out rather surprisingly. They used to have an app that you could have on your phone, and when I would get close enough to the Muse Coffee Company, it would recognize that I was there. It would open up a tab for me. My face would pop up on the iPad. They would know that Bruce Turner was fixing to come in. They know kind of like what my normal usual order is. And then I could just eat what I wanted to and drink whatever I wanted to as far as a coffee beverage. And then at the end, I would say charge it to Blue Ridge Technical Consulting, and they would see me there and they would charge it. I could establish a tip on it. I went to my barber 2 months ago, and this is how I normally would pay her, with the app on my phone, and I noticed it wouldn't work anymore. And then I found out that Square removed it from the Play Store. There is no Square app now, which was associated in a link with my checking account where I could do that. I found that incredibly simple. Now I don't know how secure it was, but does anybody know why Square pulled that? What their reasoning would have been? I mean, obviously you still have Square Register. They can still do that, but you got to do the credit card swipe now, as opposed to just being in the general vicinity. It knows I'm there. It pops up on their iPad, and the purchase is done. I found that incredibly easy to use. Was I naive in that?
All right, I'm trying to research it. The product you're talking about is something called Square Wallet, apparently.
Correct.
My read on it so far has been that it sounds like it was infrequently used and had technical problems. But I'm trying. I haven't read up further on it.
It was so incredibly simple. I didn't have to tap anything. It saw me when I came in the store. In fact, when I would drive by, I'd be on the highway, driving past the Muse Coffee House at 40 miles an hour, and my phone is in a little phone carrier on my dashboard, and it would pop up and say, "You just opened up a tab at the Muse Coffee Company." And then as I drove away in distance, of course, it would close it down. But it was so simple to use.
So the app was almost never used. The app hasn't ranked in the top 200 free finance apps in Apple's App Store for some time. Never got help pushing it from Starbucks like they hoped. And basically they backed off on support of it.
Yeah.
I just looked through a couple of articles, and it looked like the same thing. It just wasn't getting used that much.
That's actually too bad, because what Bruce described sounds pretty nice.
It does sound pretty nice, I have to agree, but it also sounds like it doesn't sound terribly secure, I'll be honest.
Well,
Here's a question for you guys. I'm doing some numbers here. This is surprising to me. So you'd think they're making a lot of money. Visa is the largest credit and debit card company. Walmart's gross profit was $128 billion for the 12 months ending in June 30. What do you think Visa's profit was last quarter? Wild guess. No Wikipedia cheating. I'm watching your fingers. I wouldn't hold your...
Is this a hand check? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, but he's got the spider there. Let's get the spider going.
I'll guess $2 billion a year. So I guess $500 million a quarter.
$1 billion a quarter was their profit. Now, I don't know if that's net or I don't know. There's many different profits, right? So I'm not sure. But I would have guessed that the world's largest credit and debit card company that makes 3% gross of every transaction, more so now than ever, would make more than $1 billion a quarter. I think that's less than Google. That's a whole lot less than Walmart. In fact, it's about 3% of what Walmart's profit is.
Consider that how much they're paying for fraud and fraud prevention.
The reason I looked at that was exactly that point that you said, that they're assuming the cost of investigating and reimbursing for fraud and the cost of innovating ways to attempt to stay one step ahead of the fraudsters. That's expensive.
And that's why they finally went to chip and pin after resisting it for so many years, because it's finally cheaper for them to deploy a whole bunch of new technology than to keep fighting fraud. And chip and pin isn't perfect, but it's so much better than what we have now, and it's not a huge burden on the consumer. It's a reasonable burden. You enter in a PIN number.
Here's a secure solution. CCC. That stands for Cache Concealed Carry.
Combination works pretty well for security.
Could you hold up your 45 with hollow points for an epic screen cap opportunity for our viewers?
And then start rolling off the $100 bills off your money clip like we had last week's show?
I do miss Monica on moments like these. I would love to get M. Monica's reaction to him with the money clip concealed carry.
Well, you all know who Dave Ramsey is. Dave Ramsey on his site sells a really nice, really high-end leather wallet with little envelope systems in there, and you put in, you have a different slot for groceries and different things like that, and there are people who live that way.
Alan, did you hit all three of these topics simultaneously? We discussed it, the exclusivity.
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Next up, this is just interesting, and I wonder what impact it's going to have on GameStop and other places, but Walmart did an announcement about, I honestly forget whatever it was, big game, they're going to get it a day early on sale at Walmart's, but as a side note, they said, by the way, we're also entering the used video game market, which is a big deal. If you're, in the
I have
used
to
video
admit,
game
I
industry.
didn't realize there was a used video game market anymore. After the latest generation of consoles, I thought prevented that sort of thing.
Well, do they prevent it, or didn't they back down? I mean, I thought, was it Microsoft Xbox where you had to be connected to the internet and you couldn't buy a used game and you had to register your game, and it was like, DRM sort of, and then I thought they backed down because there was such an outrage from the community that is so into the used market.
Well, they kind of did prevent it. Xbox One kind of backed away from it. PS4 is still, you can still use their discs and exchange it with your friends without any real problems, but they're definitely going to be moving in that direction. But for selling used games, usually it's going to reflect what's going on with the previous system. So, I mean, for a lot of the used stuff, they're going to sell probably still a lot of Xbox 360 and PS3 stuff. And so that market is still pretty robust. So I could see them getting into that.
I could see the little guys freaking out about it.
Well, I'm for anything that pushes forward doctrine of first sale. So, if we can still hold on to that 360 market and that PS3 market, that's more optimal for me. Because, I mean, even with sometimes the digital sales, I mean, you can buy them and then you can only basically use them on the system where you bought them. I know if you can buy games through GOG.com, you can just buy the game, and Doctrine of First Sale still works. So you can download the game and you can use it as much as you want for as long as you want. You don't have any more connection between yourself and the original seller. But for some other systems, there's DRM in there, and you can't really use the game off of their main servers. So anything that can help in Doctrine of First Sale, like selling used games, that's nice. That's nice in my opinion.
The last game I played was Final Fantasy X on a PS2, and it was awesome. And I had a young crush on Luna.
I'm never gonna make fun of the PS2. It was a nice system.
It was fantastic. It was like watching a movie.
The last game I played was Pong.
Oh,
dear.
come on. You guys are killing me. Does anyone on here play games at all? I am a gamer. I honestly, to goodness, I am a gamer, so I pay attention to this stuff.
What am I doing with my 24 hours a day that keeps me from having time to do what you do? I can't imagine having time to find time to play games like you're talking about. I mean,
He said he's a student, remember?
I was a student
I like
too.
wallpaper entertainment, not interactive. just like I started doing karaoke and DJing in '95, and I still do it once a week for grins. And it's I don't listen to music anymore. I've heard every freaking song. I like silence, no radio or talk radio. It drives people crazy. They want to turn the radio on. And when I do, I do so much content production, writing or whatever, the newspaper or this, that I don't want to. When I want to relax, I want wallpaper entertainment where I just have to watch it or read it. Okay, so next up is Ebola. So a judge has rejected the Ebola quarantine for a Maine nurse who was, I forget what state she went to, Texas or whatever, and she had a slight fever. She's one of these nurses who volunteered to work in Africa.
She went into New Jersey.
New Jersey. And then she had a slight fever there, which presumably was unrelated to Ebola. She just had a slight fever, because I don't think Ebola starts and then retracts and then comes back. I think once you have it, you have it. And I just, with all due respect to anyone from Maine, your governor is the lowest paid governor in the United States, and he's an idiot. And he's getting paid $70,000 more a year than he's worth. This is pure nonsense. There's no scientific base for them to quarantine this person. This is not some unsophisticated person.
Dan, hang on, Dan. Let's take a step back. Who was an idiot in this case? It was also New Jersey's governor who was an idiot in this case.
And these people have people making six figures who are scientific advisors and whole departments. They should be incredibly well informed. Now I like Chris Christie. I don't know anything about this Maine guy except on this issue they're both idiots.
Page is an idiot
and irresponsible pandering morons on this issue. I'm not saying in general they're stupid. Chris Christie's no dummy. He's a very popular politician. And for a Republican to get elected in Maine and New Jersey is saying something in itself, right? But these guys, they're both Republican governors. And on this issue, in Monrovia, which is Ebola Central, the bottom line is that you cannot pass the disease on if you are not symptomatic and your fever's not into the hundreds, 102 or whatever it is. And the incubation period's up to 21 days, but to lock up every single healthcare worker who's been to Africa for 21 days, you're not going to get any to go there. I wouldn't go there. Well, I would go there anyway and hang out with Ebola people, because I'm not convinced that the clothing and stuff the protective clothing, and there's a lawsuit that just went out against one of the big companies that produces this, saying that their anti-Ebola outfits weren't anti-Ebola, and I just saw that today. But this is just irresponsible. And you want, just like banning flights, that's stupid. Right now they come in, you take your infrared thermometer, you zap them in the forehead. If their temperature's normal, you ask them a few questions, you let them in, no problem. You find out where they're living, and they track them for 21 days. CDC does. And they do checks every day on their temperature. That's a good thing. We don't want them going, okay, I can't do that, so I'm going to fly to Johannesburg, and then I'm going to fly to the U.S., and then I won't have to go through the screening, and then we don't know where they are, and then they show up at some rural clinic in Georgia that is clueless, and they're sweaty and have a fever, and just like this one guy who died from Africa, they lie because they don't want to get in trouble, and then other people get infected. That's exactly what happened in this case. The guy lied to get out of the country because he didn't want to get in trouble, and he got the treatment, but this is a healthcare professional. Obviously, she doesn't want to give anyone else Ebola. She spent months risking her life to save people with Ebola. She obviously knows what Ebola symptoms are. She watched people die every day from it. This woman knows how to recognize the symptoms. She knows what steps to take. She's in contact with the CDC. She's doing daily monitoring for symptoms and fever, probably every couple hours. She seems fine. She was bicycling with her husband or boyfriend, whoever he is, and there's a freaking state trooper following them down the road just to make sure she doesn't do any Ebola shit or whatever. You know what I mean? I mean, it's just
literally Ebola shit.
Yeah, it has a red hue, but this woman knows. She's gonna know if she's getting Ebola, right? She spent months dealing with Ebola symptoms. She knows how to treat it. I mean, well, obviously not, or at least not to keep, but there's no, this is insane. This is just, I don't know. I think the guy's a moron. Anybody else want to opine on this? Bruce, I imagine in Lynchburg, you guys are like, keep the Ebola people out. And what's this? Do you have a voice of sanity, or are you a Glenn Beck on this one?
Well, the only thing that I would say, just to kind of add to the discussion, is does err on the side of caution come into play on any of this?
Erring on the side of... Okay, go ahead, Alan, and then I'll jump in.
This is like saying, I use this analogy for somebody else. This is like saying that you're going to remove every single shower curtain because you want to err on the side of caution after seeing Psycho.
No, that's a nonsensical allegory.
No, that's exactly what this is.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. The chance of you getting stabbed is higher than the chance of you contracting Ebola.
3,000 more people have died in the last year from the flu in the United States than from Ebola.
How many from stabbing through shower curtains, though?
You're in more danger driving to the airport from Ebola.
Yeah, and please understand, I'm not
Airport.
espousing this. I'm just trying to add to the conversation
No,
because
I understand, and it is on the surface. It appears to be a reasonable argument. Shouldn't we just have this abundance of caution to make sure? And if we go by that route, then we could legitimately say that out of an abundance of caution, every time you sneeze, you should be confined to your house because you may have flu. And flu is more contagious and more deadly than Ebola is.
yeah, I fly every month, and I'm beginning to see some weird people on flights who are doing some really strange things since this has happened. And there's so what we need is information, knowledge. Was it Emerson, Tennyson said, "Fear stems from ignorance," and so
Exactly.
the more information we can get, the better off we'll be.
That's
Right.
true,
And
Bruce, but also we're a representative democracy. You can't expect everyone to spend an hour reading a CDC report or even the Wikipedia article on this stuff. We rely on our leaders who are informed and know better to not stoke the fears and act like idiots. And that's the issue here. If Ebola is highly infectious but not highly contagious. By that I mean that a single Ebola virus, if you touch someone's bodily fluid, and then you will get it. For a single Ebola virus can do that to you. But it's not highly contagious. In other words, you can't if I was if you're sitting in a restaurant next to me and you had it and you were symptomatic and had a fever, it's unlikely that I would get it. It's the African guys have this. It's more in the bush, but they have the laying on of hands and stuff. Or someone's sick in the hospital. I saw this one video on Vice. Vice has some incredible videos on this. They're great on this. There was some kid, and the parents brought him to the hospital, and he had Ebola, and he's on the writhing in pain, and they didn't have a bed for him. Then passersby came and they're gathered around like, what, this is a Liberian. You can't help him. And the parents, whatever, assume that they brought him there because he's lying on the ground, unable to sit or stand. So I assume he had assistance. I didn't see a stretcher there, so they're probably dead now. And it's a lack of knowledge, and but the people. The thing is, these are governors who have secretaries of Health and Human Services and entire departments who do this sort of thing. They're in touch with the CDC. Certainly, the governors who have actually had a person there with Ebola. Have a direct line to talk to somebody in D.C. who knows what's going on, a medical expert. These people should know better. They should be better informed, and I think they are, and they do know better, but they're stoking the fear because so many people, and your statement, it would probably be the most common one. Shouldn't we just err on the side of caution? Wouldn't that be better? Why take a chance? We don't know, like all these healthcare workers were supposedly protected, and now they're sick, right? But if you actually study it, like this is a trained healthcare professional. She knows what the symptoms are. She's monitoring herself constantly. If she starts to get a fever, she's going to report it because she knows how bad a disease it is, what a rough way to go it is. She'll be the first one to say, I need to go to the hospital. I think I got Ebola. And to say that she should be imprisoned for 3 weeks is not a way to encourage more people to go to Africa to volunteer with Doctors Without Borders and other groups and that's what we want. We want to contain the virus where it is. It's
Yeah,
not in
let me
anyone's
add,
best
there's
interest
another
to let
element.
it spread.
Yeah, there's another element to that thing, and I think it's worth mentioning. There is a general lack of trust of politicians,
Fair.
federal bureaucrats with the CDC and other places, NIH, over whether or not you're getting the true skinny. Okay, I think that's a part of that. And beyond the intentional stoking or unintentional stoking of fears, there's a general lack of trust in what people are saying. I think that's part of the equation as well.
Even on I mean, to look at a healthcare. If you like your plan, you can keep your plan. I don't think that was a big trust builder. The IRS scandal.
I think related to that, I think related to that, however, is a general lack of grounding in scientific knowledge.
Well, okay. Do you support, Bruce? You think it was a good idea to lock up Americans of Japanese descent on the West Coast during World War II?
Absolutely not.
Well, I mean, shouldn't we be cautious? One of these Japs might take out a building. That was I mean, seriously, it's the same thing I draw. I don't think that's a crazy analogy. Do you?
Probably not. We're going to continue to see pendulum swings on this because there are people of different viewpoints about transmission out there. Obviously, there are some wacko sites, but there are some people who legitimately have different views about transmission, and of course that's part of the minefield that we live in, in the world of the internet, and people believing certain things and then repeating things that they've heard. So we need trusted people who can give us good facts and knowledge.
Now, I support the fact, and it is a fact, that local governments, state governments, and the national government have extraordinary powers when there is an epidemic or whatever, like this typhoid guy that they were pursuing. They have extraordinary powers to pursue, lock up somebody who is a genuine public threat. And the judge said, I think he didn't dispute that, but he said that he looked at the evidence presented because she had an attorney and they had, she's a nurse, and I'm sure it wasn't hard to get a legal team to defend this case because it's high profile and potentially groundbreaking and going to become a bigger issue. So it's interesting. That's why we're talking about it. It couldn't be farther removed from tech, but the lawyers, the judge said, and he actually thanked her for her service, but he said this just wasn't based in science, this desire to lock them up. I mean, if you wanted to go with the caution argument, if you locked up the Muslim guy who sells you coffee every morning, or runs the gas station, then if you locked up all of those guys, you might prevent a couple terrorist attacks in the United States. But is that fair? Is that something we're going to do in the land of the free, right? The Japanese internment was an awful thing, but it was out of irrational fear of the unknown, and it resulted in a bunch of innocent, proud Americans that were not even Japanese citizens, Americans who were of Japanese descent being locked up in a concentration camp here in this country so we could protect our freedom. Does anyone? I mean, I just think, we want these people to volunteer over there and try to keep it from spreading, and it's not helping when you're saying you're going to be in jail for 3 weeks when you come back, even if you're perfectly healthy.
Now, Dan, your sister's a nurse,
yes,
correct?
An RN.
What is her perspective on this situation?
I haven't discussed this with her, but I did discuss the thing I was very, very shocked about. I called her up. I didn't realize that once you have it, if you're a survivor, you're immune to getting it again. So this nurse, or like the other nurse, Fram, whatever her name is, who got it and survived, and famously Obama hugged her in a ceremony, and he was doing that to make a point in the same way when Princess Diana hugged an AIDS patient to make a point, something that I don't think we're going to see Chris Christie or this moronic Maine guy doing anytime soon. I think they'll be hugging Ebola victims. There's no Mother Teresa genes in these guys, but that's interesting because now I posted an article. It's really fascinating that the survivors who have gone through this horrible experience and lived are completely immune. They could sit there and wade through their feces and they're fine, you know. So they're helping treat them now. And it's sort of like, you know, I can imagine you're very valuable if you're, imagine a skilled doctor or really good nurse, and you've survived Ebola. I mean, you could write your ticket, you know.
Yeah, I would just add one more thing about this. When you mentioned about she had no trouble putting together a legal team because it was a high-profile case and everything, reminds me to say there are three factors, and they all go around something we've been talking about. But I wrote them down: motivation, vested interest, and exploitation. These three things are players, no matter what side you are in on this thing. You know, there's exploitation going on. There's people who have a vested interest, you know, whether it's a pharmaceutical company who's producing potential, cures and things like that, and motivation. I mean, there's, you know, all this creates this general distrust that we have, and until that really gets cleared up, you know, everybody's got a skin in the game for various and sundry reasons.
Well, Bruce, you're right, and the safest political course is to do exactly what they did. Because you have a population that is terrified of Ebola. They're getting ramped up by these Alex Jones guys, and even I'm disappointed Bill O'Reilly is saying that she should be locked up. Hannity, I imagine, who I like and I know, is going crazy. So the safest course of action is to say what you said. Well, an ounce, prudence, like George H.W. used to always say, an ounce of caution. But then it's so much easier to do that than to explain to the population, listen, here's the deal. This is stupid. Here's why. We're better off doing this for these reasons. But you can't sit, just like the travel ban. I have a great argument against that. I have a great argument against locking up any healthcare practitioner who's volunteering to risk her life to save people in Africa for 3 weeks when they come back in jail. So, but you can't sit everyone down and say that. And I can't do it as eloquently as Alex Jones and Bill O'Reilly can argue against me. So that's where we are. That's the safe course of action.
I don't know. I think the psycho analogy is a pretty good, eloquent way to put it.
Remember when Jimmy Carter wanted to, he converted like gas pumps to metric and stuff, and everybody bitched. The smartest thing we could do would be, metric just makes more sense. Everything matches.
No, it doesn't.
You don't think it does?
No.
Really?
Really?
I didn't see that one coming. Why
Really?
not?
And you never read my blog. I've got a long rant about that one.
Really? You're probably a daylight
Metric
savings
makes no
time
sense
supporter.
whatsoever. Metric makes no sense whatsoever. The only good reason to actually adopt metric is that everyone else has already done it.
Right.
So you
That's
think
the
our
only good
system is
reason.
superior?
And mind you, there's a pretty damn good reason, but that's the only reason.
Our system, literally based on the length of a average foot, is better than.
King of England.
Yes, it is.
He's a monarchist, Michael.
No. You want to know why?
We do. You threw it out. You threw us a bone.
No,
You got to.
What is the average length of a stride?
Of
3
a
feet.
horse?
1 yard.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, a person stride?
Yeah. The difference is
I'm
the
5'7",
important
so
thing to
I'm.
the important thing to understand about the what we'll call the imperial system, even though that's not its name, is that the imperial system isn't just based on, length of a foot. It's based on human scale measurements. So things like a mile have a logical correspondence to what people do. You walk for 20 minutes, you've covered about a mile.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Things like a cup of water is about the same in terms of a volume as a cup of other things. Breaking things down in terms of fractional measurements is far easier to do when you're talking about breaking it down by 16ths or 12ths than it is to breaking it down by tens.
In other words, our
So
American
it's a
system
horrible
and our American and British system is more, or I guess the British system which we've adopted is more evolutionary, and the other one was manufactured.
Correct.
Like
Now, mind you,
our base 10 number system.
the base 10 number system is a horrible base number system to work with.
Well, the 9 or 11 or other numbers, the binaries used in computers, but the reason we have a base 10 number system is because we have 10 fingers. That's how people learned it. They would count,
Right. But that's a horrible reason. It's a horrible excuse. Base 8, base 12, and base 16 are far better.
Boy, that would be something to switch
that-
to.
And here's the thing, Dan. Let me put it to you this way. How easy is it to divide a pizza in half?
Easy.
Very
How
easy.
easy is it to divide it into quarters?
Okay, I'm
Easy.
How about eighths?
sure.
Sixteenths?
Sure.
Yep.
9
How about
slices
10?
would be a challenge.
How about 10 slices?
And
How
this
about
is you definitely have to get one of those Costco things that they have. You know, the circle with
Exactly.
the slots.
Exactly.
I'm trying to imagine
and
going
that's
up to
why
the
base 10 is so bad.
the average minimum
Oh,
wage
yeah,
guys working
base
these
10.
restaurants and saying, "Okay, I need you to put this in 5 slices so that the portion's right." They just be like,
Exactly.
you'd have to give them a diagram. But how is
And
that
that's
analogous? That's a bit of a stretch because we
No.
all know
No.
10s. We're all used to 10s. I mean, like
No,
you said,
Dan,
8, 12,
Dan.
16 or better.
Dan, that's the entire point. I mean, on some level, yes, it's absurd that there are 16 whatevers in a whatever, and I can't even remember that. But if you think about where you use those units, you're using them in the kitchen where you need to divide things up. You know, how do you make half a portion? That's easy. How do you make a third of a portion? That's easy. How do you make a quarter of a? That's easy. All of these things are in places where it makes sense to divide them up in those ways.
Sai says, I'm going to get to, we got several comments here. Sai says the math is easier in base 2, 4, 6, 2, 4, 8, and 16.
And 12 to a lesser extent.
Exponentially 2, all those.
12 is much better than 10.
Our leaders are watching the news outlets to make every Ebola story breaking news. Ebola on U.S. shores. Smacks, let me move this thing out of the way. Smacks of World War II coverage, said Sai. Sai also says one day you'll be able to just Google someone's name and Google will tell you what diseases they have. There may be an app out there. Mike Phillips says, yes, those Democrats never pander. Oh, I was noting that they're...
You know what? Let me be absolutely fair. Okay? Andrew Cuomo is also a freaking idiot.
Okay, so we're
That's more practice than
1
some
and
of the
2 for the Republicans.
Yeah, I just want to say I'm thinking Papa Allen, better ingredients, better pizza.
There you go. Okay, Sai says he still games nightly. It's how he unwinds. On the other topic, PayPal has a similar system, he says. And
I've got this comment from George Cozy. He says, how about wearing paper medical masks across the mouth and nose if you get the flu? Why isn't that a social norm? Anyone want to opine on why it is or is not a social norm in the U.S.?
to wear like what the Chinese did during the bird flu thing, if you have this flu?
Yeah, and remember, people would wear masks there not because they were afraid of catching it, because they're afraid of transmitting it. Because it's useless in terms of preventing receiving it, but it's incredibly effective to prevent transmission.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah. The reason why people wear masks isn't because they're afraid of catching it. I've got a strange noise coming from somewhere around here, and I don't know what. Because they're afraid of transmitting it.
And the
It's a good
room
question.
goes
I think it's a good question from George Cozy. Why don't we do this? And I think the answer is that, well, I don't know. I don't have an answer.
Actually, you probably addressed this for me just now. I always thought it was boneheaded that people wore those masks anyway, because it can't possibly keep you from getting the illness. Couldn't possibly be effective at that. So I always thought it was silly to wear the masks. It didn't, of course, being the classic narcissistic, self-centered American that I am, it didn't occur to me to wear it so that I wouldn't share the disease with anyone else. That's quite a rational and opposite way of looking at it.
Probably has more to do with the vain nature of human beings, that they don't want to look weird. I think that's the reason why most people wouldn't wear them.
Exactly. I agree.
I think that's part of it. I think the other part, though, is, why is it that people go to work when they're sick? Because honestly, employers you'd think that employers in their own vested self-interest would want to send an employee home.
They do want to, generally.
Well, but yet we've got a healthcare policy that doesn't encourage that.
Well, they might have like a week or whatever, and then what if someone's a hypochondriac, or what if they're making it up because they want to go to the Derby that night or whatever? It can be abused. I mean, that's a complex thing. And I get that people get scared and that politicians want to react to that fear to be on the right side politically of an issue, even if scientifically and commonsensically it's the wrong side. And you see, like, I remember people died at Chi-Chi's used to be a popular Mexican restaurant chain, and they had a salmonella outbreak or whatever it was, and they went out of business. They went bankrupt, although they're still in frozen food section.
Let me cut you off right there and say this bluntly, okay? That is a great sign of a politician, not a leader.
Yes.
I'm not, I'm just acknowledging that that's what they do,
right, I know you disagree with me there. But I think that's what it fundamentally boils down to. Yeah. These governors are not leaders. They're politicians. And as such, they do not deserve to hold the office they do. I will bluntly say that about all three of them.
Basically, anyone who even looks like they've been to Africa should be locked up for 4 weeks on the safe side. This reminds me, I'm going to buy some gold and storable foods for when Janet Reno comes to get my guns, and some more batteries for my AM radio.
Janet Reno's pretty much out of the mix on that subject, Dan.
She's my favorite, though.
Okay, great.
Okay, so anyway, but no, this was not a partisan attack. The Republicans or the Democrats, they don't. There's no exclusivity on stupid. It is a bipartisan issue. Okay, so Google's new computer with human-like. Okay, one of the stories, we didn't have time for it tonight, but some of our more technical viewers might enjoy reading. Google's new computer with human-like learning abilities will program itself. Coming up Monday, there was a neat thing where now that neat where you can say "Okay Google," and I thought I was supposed to be able to say that from the lock screen or the home screen, but I can't on my Nexus 7, which is running the latest, greatest, most asbestos Android. Nor can I do it from my Note 2, which is running like 0.2 behind, but close. And but now in apps, like if Alan creates an app, he'll be able to add that feature. So you can go right, I guess it'll activate a Google search and take you to the Google app, or will it bring you the results in your app, or a hybrid, or do we know,
That's
Alan?
not clear to me yet. I still haven't quite figured that part out, and I haven't tested this yet, but it's exciting. What it sounds like is they're now providing a way to hook directly into Google Voice Search, and that's pretty powerful. We'll cover it more on Monday, and hopefully by then I'll have a chance to test it.
Excellent. Michael Ellis, you're in transit, I see. Are you going to pee, or?
No, I'm moving to a different location in the house.
It's undisclosed, so you
Yes.
are the Dick Cheney.
It's always undisclosed.
Okay, so are you at a point where you could tell us how your week has been, or
Sure.
should we wait and skip you?
No, I'm fine. I'll just stop right where I am.
Do you have any tenants? And are you running it? I want to ask you a question. We have a lot of local controversies about Airbnb, and I know you've dabbled in that. And you're giving I think it's like $20 a night, and includes a bottle of wine because you're trying to get a bunch of 5-star reviews to build up your rapport with the users.
Offered a tremendously better promotion than any I've ever dreamed of. But
if someone wants to find you, how do they do that? Is it public, or are you private, or you don't want to associate it with us because God knows what kind of stalkers we might inadvertently be sending your way? You just as soon hug the nurse with Ebola.
There's no easy way for me to tell you how to find it. You have to search on Airbnb, and the searches generate a number of possible places in the neighborhood that you choose, and there are many more in the neighborhood you choose than. So there's no way to guarantee that mine comes up in your search.
So I can't say I'm really wasted and I want to crash on Michael Ellis's couch. There's no way on Airbnb to.
You can if you know the direct link to get to it, but that's not.
Okay.
Yeah,
Something.
it's not.
Okay,
Yeah.
so how many stars do you have? Is it stars or is it?
No, they don't do it that way. You just get reviews by individual people that stay, and my reviews are good. And the I had someone, in fact, this morning write me and say, "I'm coming to New York. I'll be there in 3 hours. I know it's late notice. Can you host me?" So I wrote back and said, "Wow, this really is late notice, but yes, I could host you tonight." She wanted one night, she and her sister,
Wow.
and I never heard from them again. So here it is now at whatever time it is, and they never called. They never. I sent back a tentative acceptance, and they must have taken something else.
Does
So
that happen a lot?
it's never happened to me before, but I know that it can happen. I knew it could happen. It's one of the flaws in the system, if you ask me. When they write and say that they propose or they send you an inquiry, I can write back, and the most I can do is pre-approve them. Then they might get 5 pre-approvals, and then they get to look through them all and handpick which one they want to take, and they never respond to me to tell me that I can take somebody else.
In this case, to be fair, it's not a big deal because it's not like an hour later someone else called to book. But if they had booked 6 months in advance and it was a popular wedding weekend, then you could have lost some serious revenue.
Right. Now, when you pre-approve someone, you can keep taking bookings until you get a firm book. So you can pre-approve 5 people and book somebody and take and the one that books is the one that gets it.
What's Airbnb's take?
I haven't figured out exactly how it works, but in my circumstance, it averages out to about 10%,
That's fair.
and it's
They'd never have found you otherwise.
completely acceptable for me.
Are you in standalone or condo or what kind of housing are you in?
It's a 5 or 6-story building.
Are your neighbors even aware?
Some of the ones that I've told are aware, but the others don't know.
Nobody
unless-
cares.
Well, they would care only if anybody were a problem, but they never are.
That's
But
the best way. See, a lot of these people get up in arms and they want a solution to a problem that doesn't exist. My
Right,
attitude
and-
is, you know what, there's a big controversy locally about this, and they're all like, oh, you know, we don't want these riffraff in here, and there's never that I'm aware of been a problem. These people
Most
are
of the time,
best
people don't
behavior,
even know what's going on.
and then that's why we have a sheriff's department. If someone's out of control, you call the sheriff's department, right?
Exactly.
Why do you have to have a bunch of zoning and stuff and double the price up? I'm a free market guy, and you should have property owners' rights. You can certainly rent your apartment for 6 months or a year without a problem. Why not a couple nights?
But
If
you know
someone's
what they did in San
privately-
Francisco? They passed a law on this, and you cannot. The law is very specific. If you're using a service, I assume they can't just name Airbnb. They have to name a service like Airbnb, somehow with descriptive terms. But they said you can't do it more than 90 days in a year in your home. And which is because that's directly the hotel lobby beating up the city council and saying, you're killing our business with these.
Still, that's a lot. That's almost every single weekend night. You know what I mean?
But if you're doing it because you need the money, why should anyone be able to tell you that you can't take your own property and rent it?
I
It's
think
not-
that you should be able to do, if you're not posing a threat to somebody else, that's fine. But if the only threat you're posing is to the incumbent legacy established competitors, that's wrong.
This is the same thing as Uber putting up a stink about taxi cabs. Exactly the same thing.
It's the exact same thing as all the fights
It's
Tesla
a
has had
red herring
trying to sell
to say
cars
yes,
to people who want to buy the cars.
irresponsible, or that somehow the neighbors are unsafe because of the Airbnb guests. Certainly that happens. There are situations where that happens, just like Uber ends up with problems from either bad drivers or bad passengers. But that's not at all what's happening normally. This is about business interests trying to squash a competitor.
Yeah, we have the same thing here, and then I'll turn it back over to you. But we this one cab company, a lower price cab company came in. I mean, really cheap. Any ride anywhere in town, $2. I mean, my God.
That's cheap.
That's affordable. So I mean, that's like you're the guy who sweeps up McDonald's affordable. So
Yeah.
I think it's great, if they can make money. And they came in. He bought these old cop cars, these big Crown Vics that suck up gas. And this other lady opened a company. She's got these little tiny compact cars, right? So she's probably spending half as much on gas. So his thing was like, well, there's some convicted felons who work for her. I don't know what it is. It's probably somebody who, wrote a $250 check 20 years ago, and it bounced. Convicted felon does not mean convicted felon. It could be an axe murderer. It could be someone who bounced a check over $200. So anyway, that happened. But how was your week in general? And I apologize for monopolizing your thing, delaying your trip to the bathroom.
My first week back from Rome, and back at home and getting settled and cleaning the apartment and and getting myself together to continue on my coursework and looking for work. So it's all good.
In the meantime, it's okay that you want to pay Michael money 3 hours before a booking, but please show up.
I don't have work right now, so I take the last minute bookings.
Oh yeah, awesome. All right, good for you. And
I have to make it to the show this week finally.
yeah, you got your Kahlua going on.
Yeah, I went to buy my booze for Kahlua. I got the booze, but I didn't end up making Kahlua tonight. Instead, I had a nice evening with a French lady. So we walked to the liquor store, and then we walked to the ATM to activate my new debit card, and then we walked back. And we had a glass of wine.
Just some random person that you encountered while walking, or someone you knew?
A neighbor.
Oh, okay. Cool. Maybe more than a neighbor one day.
Yeah, I think it's just a neighbor.
Kevin, how was your Google Plus week?
Google Plus Week was pretty average.
And Alan, I'll be right back.
Okay. I got to watch Google try and sell some new products, especially the Nexus 6, and have all my worst fears confirmed that they've never learned anything about previous sales because they didn't manage anyone's expectations, and it sold out in about 18.5 seconds and had everyone trying to refresh their screen. And I'm completely frustrated with the way they don't manage expectations. In other non-Google news, I got to advance vote. So I have my little sticker right here.
Cool.
So hopefully people got to advance vote before next Tuesday. And other than that, it's been a pretty nice week in general. And that's it for me for right now.
Bruce Turner, how was your Google Plus week?
Well, it's been great, and I want to say how much I appreciate being able to jump in here and participate. It's been a while. I would say
it is great to see you again, Bruce. It has
well, thank you.
Ages, and it's wonderful to see you, to hear your melodious voice.
Well, I still am enjoying my Note 2, but I want to say one of the things that really makes my Google Plus week great every week is I am just continued to be enthralled with my Chromebook. I no longer travel with my Dell Latitude laptop that the business provides. I travel with my Chromebook. I use Chrome Remote Desktop to remote into this, big honking, Windows 8.1 machine that I've got here, and it's just such a delight. I was in a coffee shop today. Everybody, their Macs and their Windows laptops bringing in their power bricks. I sat there for 6 hours. When I left, I still had an hour of battery life left. So, really love the Chromebook. Incredible tool for me.
I'm with you, Bruce. I still take my Pixel everywhere, and people still look at me out of surprise. Like, you still use your Pixel? I'm like, of course I use my Pixel. Yeah. It's perfect for everything that I need to do, except software development.
Right.
And even that, I feel like if I put a little effort into figuring out how, it would be great for that too.
Yeah. I counted 3 Chromebooks in the Muse Coffee Company today, and I loved telling the story. And I really like seeing that Google's got this traveling roadshow going around to college campuses and introducing students to Chromebooks.
That's definitely the long view, isn't it? That's the Apple approach to turning kids onto Apple computers at an early age.
Oh, yeah. And my granddaughter, she's 14 years old. Every 9th grader at EC Glass High School and Heritage High School in Lynchburg, Virginia, all got brand new Chromebooks in a really nice case to carry it around in. So it's great.
They're going to grow up used to that idea, and that motif will work for them.
Yep.
Some of these ideas Google does, like Project Loon and stuff, seem crazy, and they're mocked for their failures. But I would think if you'd gone back to the very first idea of a Chromebook, something that could only work if it was connected to the internet, that people might have said this was going to be an epic fail, and it's turned out to be exactly the opposite.
Well, no, it hasn't, Dan.
Said it was
It's
an
turned
epic.
out to be an epic fail.
What?
Say that again.
You're acting like this is the first time the Chromebook has been released upon the masses, and it's not. This is at least the third or fourth time that this product has been released. The difference is this is the first time that it succeeded in any even vague form. A friend of mine works on the Chromebook team. He develops Chrome OS. And when he was hired there, he and I had a conversation. And he said, you and I have looked at this stuff before. This is, we've seen these products come and go in the past. And he said, but I think this is the first time that it may really work.
Can you name any? I mean, what?
Sun Microsystems, for years, they had what they were calling Java terminals.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And it's essentially a Chromebook.
That's exactly right.
They're almost identical products.
Yeah.
And yet it didn't fly then.
Did it require only like Wi-Fi?
No.
But it wasn't a consumer product, was it? That was a commercial thing. I mean,
It was aimed at businesses because it was a relatively expensive product, and that's one of the things that's why this time it has a better chance of working.
But I mean, had anyone ever come up with something
dropped dramatically?
Had anybody come up with a product that required internet connectivity and was
Yes.
it was aimed at consumers?
To some degree, yes. All of them did. But this one isn't really aimed at consumers. We're talking about it's aimed at businesses and schools, and consumers get it too.
Especially, it's fantastic for schools.
But I think the driving force in the marketplace that will cement this as a positive force in the computer industry is that it can be adopted by consumers. And when it is, especially the young ones, as Bruce was describing, then when it is adopted by them, this will change the mentality of people. What made Apple a possible market contender for everything else was that they gave away computers into schools and kids got used to them. And when they came to high school and when they got to college, they didn't know who IBM was, but they knew what an Apple was.
Yep.
And IBM didn't do that. They were idiots for not doing what they needed to do there. They gave away the world's computer market.
But dumb terminals, even not in the context of internet-based, but wire-based, are very old. That was the first thing. I remember in the embassy in London when I was a teenager, we worked on Wang terminals that were connected to some sort of central thing that probably was connected to DC, I guess.
Now we're going to listen to Dan tell stories about playing with his Wang.
It's Halloween. All right, a couple comments, and we'll go to Alan. George says the latest terrorist attack in the U.S. was carried out by a crazy white guy they just caught in the woods. True. And reminds me of the Boston Marathon thing. All the horrific, just accusing people at random because they were brown and they looked Arabic or whatever. And it turned out, my favorite tweet on that was, the guys are literally Caucasian. They're from the Caucasus. AJ Schultz says, great to see the panel again. Finally made it. And time to see the sign-off. Great to have you, AJ. Alan, how was your Google Plus week, sir?
It was pretty good. I spent the first half or so of the week in Burlingame, California, attending the Google Glass Developers Conference, GG DevCon. I learned some interesting things. Hopefully I shared some interesting things. Always good to meet up with people like Kurt and John and the rest of the gang. So that was fun. Other than that, it's been a pretty good week. Busy. How was your Google Plus week, Dan?
It was good. I'm in a friendly war with John C. Dvorak about our respective internet connections, and so he did a friendly troll and blew me away. Well, not really. It was better. So he said, here is what I look at midnight. Beat this, and his was 68 down, 12 up, with a 25 millisecond ping. And mine was less. Mine was like 11 up, 50 something, 57 down, but my ping was like half his, which is important for video conferencing, so that's good. So I told him after the show tonight, I would, this was mine. I told him after the show tonight I would do another test and see if it's any different. But my ping was 14, which is much, much faster than Mr. Dvorak, who I adore and hope to have on the show at some point. Also, I think we're supposed to have Mike Elgin on this month, the Twit news director dude, and our good friend. He wrote a great article speculating about inbox is a sign that Google wants to kill the email dump pipe that is Gmail and get everyone on inbox. Did you see that, Alan? Did you agree with it?
I didn't, but
It's a classic Elgin post, though, isn't it? I can't wait to ask him about it. He's good. And then, so that was fun. Also, we got the newspaper out. It was great. It was way up in ads. It was hard to fit all the stuff in. And the managing editor's yelling at me about I didn't get all the stuff in. And I'm like, I got 40 pages, not 39, not 41. But it was good paper. Check it out. You can read the full issue. It's completely free on newsstands now, or it's still in the process of being delivered. And if you want to read it online, there's some good stuff. There's a really interesting article that Bruce might like about how the tobacco funds they sued the tobacco companies and they created a tobacco commission to distribute these funds for things, and how it's been sort of squandered and lost. It's kind of interesting, but you can read that at warrencountyva.com or frederickcounty.com, right on the homepage, frederickcounty.com or warrencountyva.com. It's right there for free. Check it out. And studies have shown free is the best way to receive something. So we appreciate all you folks taking the time. Go ahead. Oh, okay. All you folks taking the time to watch. If you have kids or you were involved in Halloween activities, we hope you had a wonderful, pleasant, fun, and safe Halloween, and enjoy the diabetic coma that your kids will be in for the next couple of days. But we appreciate you watching. We have two programs. This program is called Google Plus Week. We're on every Friday at 8:30 Eastern, 5:30 Pacific. And we have another program, which I'd love to, hopefully Bruce will join us again since I intro him every week. And then every time I do the intro on the show, I get a text on my phone from Bruce, and he says, ha, 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 I won't be there. But I still got FaceTime, baby. I think you're the first one I intro, aren't you?
Yes.
And then Duke, who's been on once since you guys, you have a Monday gig.
Yeah, and that gig has gone away, so I've been considering coming back. So my Monday night schedule has changed again.
Well, you have a standing invite. In fact, I think I troll you with an invite every Monday.
I appreciate that.
Spam your phone. So that's a service we provide. But thank you all for watching. Thanks for the comments. We apologize. It's kind of kludgy now because we have to use multiple systems to get to the comments because the API, brace yourselves for this shocking news. The API is a bit messed up at the moment. But thanks for watching. We really appreciate it. It's always a blast. Happy Halloween. Until next week. Until next time, have an epic Google Plus week. Good night, everybody.